that fractured person in the mirror? That's what toxic relationships do. They don't just break your heart, they break your sense of self. As Carl Jung noted, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Toxic relationships create what psychologist Donald Winnicott called false self-adaptation. You stretch yourself in so many directions to please others, you forget who you really are. Psychologist Karen Horney called these neurotic solutions, the masks we create to earn love. But as she warned, the more masks we wear, the harder it becomes to find our real face. These are your relationship commandments, unwritten rules you absorbed from childhood. Family therapist Harriet Lerner taught that we often repeat what we don't repair. This is the abandonment paradox. We stay in painful situations because the fear of being alone feels more terrifying than the pain we're experiencing. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow explains this. We internalize the behaviors of those who hurt us, then wonder why we're starting to sound like them. We keep returning to empty wells hoping they'll magically contain water. Psychologist Albert Ellis called this magical thinking, hoping reality will change because we want it to. When your self-worth becomes dependent on someone else's approval, you lose your internal navigation system. You can't find your way when you're always looking to others for direction. Toxic relationships give you funhouse mirrors. They either magnify your flaws until they're all you see, or minimize your strengths until you doubt they exist. These are your energetic attachments, invisible cords that keep you connected to people who drain your life force. Cutting them feels terrifying because you worry you'll lose part of yourself. This is cognitive dissonance, when your brain tries to reconcile the contradiction between this person says they love me and this person's actions hurt me. Your protective walls were necessary for survival, but now they're keeping love out instead of danger. The work is to dismantle them brick by brick, not all at once. As philosopher Søren Kierkegaard observed, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. You cannot heal while trying to hold on to what's already gone. The deepest loneliness isn't being alone, it's feeling alone while you're with someone. This is what psychologist John Bowlby called connection without attachment. Healing begins at this exact moment, when you choose the uncertainty of healing over the familiar comfort of suffering. As Nietzsche said, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. As psychiatrist Carl Jung famously observed, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. We keep choosing the same toxic patterns because they feel familiar, not because they feel good. This is the goalpost moving dynamic. Just when you think you've met their standards, the requirements change. You're trying to solve a puzzle designed to remain unsolved. Psychologist Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory explains this. Your nervous system gets wired for constant vigilance, always waiting for the next emotional crisis. This hypervigilance is what psychologist Bessel van der Kolk describes in trauma responses. Your body stays in constant alert, waiting for danger that never quite arrives but always feels imminent. Your brain's amygdala, the fear center, magnifies potential threats. It would rather have you miserable but safe than risk the unknown, even if the unknown contains happiness. This is what family systems theorist Murray Bowen called emotional fusion. Your boundaries become so porous you can no longer tell where you end and the other person begins. Psychologist Albert Ellis called this awfulizing, the belief that something is so terrible we cannot bear it, so we pretend the dead thing is still alive. This is confirmation bias. We focus on the 10% that was good and ignore the 90% that was painful, because our brain prefers consistent stories over accurate ones. This is the magnification effect. In our memory, toxic people become larger than life, more powerful than they actually are, while we remember ourselves as smaller and more powerless. As psychologist Nathaniel Branden taught, self-esteem is an internal experience. You cannot use your self-worth key to unlock someone else's approval. Psychologist Mary Ainsworth's attachment research shows we carry internal working models of relationships. Healing requires updating that model from what was to what could be. Intergenerational trauma theorist Dr. Daniel Siegel explains that we must differentiate our responses. Not all relationships require the same survival strategies. Our nervous system, through what psychologist Stephen Porges calls neuroception, constantly scans for safety. Familiar pain often registers as safer than unfamiliar peace. Healing involves what psychologist Peter Levine calls renegotiation, not just coping with trauma, but building new neural pathways that support safety and connection. As poet Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you. Your pain contains the exact medicine needed for your healing, if you're willing to work with it." This is the work of psychologist John Bowlby's attachment theory in action. Our earliest relationships wire our brain for what love should feel like. If connection felt uncertain growing up, stable relationships will feel unfamiliar to your nervous system. Family systems theorist Murray Bowen taught that we're part of emotional legacy systems. The patterns you're seeing aren't random, they're echoes across generations, waiting for someone to become conscious enough to change them. This is what psychologist Dr. Nicole LePera calls reparenting, giving yourself the unconditional acceptance you may not have received so you can ask for what you need without shame. As psychotherapist boundaries expert Dr. Harriet Lerner teaches, it's not selfish to define yourself. The moment you stop confusing love with self-abandonment is the moment healing becomes possible. Psychologist Carl Rogers believed in the actualizing tendency, that we all have an innate drive toward growth. Your future self is already within you, waiting for you to recognize and embody them. This is cognitive restructuring, what psychologist Albert Ellis called changing your irrational beliefs. The qualities others pathologized are often your greatest strengths when directed toward healthy relationships. As Viktor Frankl taught in his logotherapy, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our growth and our freedom. Responsibility isn't about fault, it's about responsibility. Psychologist Nathaniel Branden was right. Self-esteem is an internal experience. You've been trying to use your self-worth key to unlock everyone else's approval when it was only ever meant to open your own fulfillment. This is memory reconsolidation, what neuroscientist Dr. Daniel Siegel describes as updating old memories with new information. Your inner child holds the missing pieces that help you see your whole story. As humanistic psychologist Carl Rogers taught, the self is not something to be found, but something to be created. You are the artist and the marble, constantly sculpting yourself toward greater authenticity. This is what psychologist Dr. Gabor Mate calls authentic self-expression, when your external life aligns with your internal truth. The compass stops fighting when you stop resisting your true north. Psychologist Mary Ainsworth's attachment research shows we can develop earned secure attachment, creating new relational templates through conscious practice, no matter our early programming. This is integration, what psychologist Dr. Dan Siegel defines as linking differentiated parts into a connected whole. Your adult wisdom and childlike wonder working together create something stronger than either could alone. Psychologist Donald Winnicott wrote about the true self emerging when environmental conditions support authenticity. That supportive environment can now be you, giving yourself what you needed all along. As Carl Jung described the individuation process, you're not healing by eliminating parts of yourself, but by integrating them into a more complex, complete whole. Your vulnerability and strength together become your superpower. As researcher Kristen Neff demonstrates, self-compassion activates our caregiving system and reduces cortisol levels. Your body cannot heal while it's still in fight or flight mode from self-criticism. This is what psychologist Dr. John Gottman calls building sound relationship houses. But first, you must build a sound relationship with yourself, brick by conscious brick. Psychologist B.F. Skinner's behaviorism principles apply here. What you consistently water grows. Your attention is fertilizer. Be mindful where you pour your energy. This is what psychologist Dr. Carl Rogers called becoming a fully functioning person. When your locus of evaluation shifts from external to internal and you trust your own organismic valuing process. Psychologist Peter Levine's somatic experiencing shows that trauma healing happens in the body. This joyful movement signals your nervous system shifting from survival to thriving mode. This is neuroplasticity in action, what psychologist Dr. Rick Hansen describes as taking in the good. Your brain literally rewires itself when you consistently direct loving attention toward yourself. Carl Jung's shadow work teaches that our disowned parts contain gold. What you thought were weaknesses are often undeveloped strengths waiting for your acceptance. This is the work psychologist Dr. Sue Johnson describes in emotionally focused therapy, creating secure attachment with yourself first so you can form healthy connections with others. Psychologist John Bowlby's concept of the secure base becomes internalized. You learn to provide yourself the safety that allows for exploration and joy. As philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." Your healing journey has created facets of resilience, wisdom, and compassion that only pressure could produce. Psychologist Wilhelm Reich called this character armor, the physical manifestation of emotional defenses. As you heal emotionally, your body literally learns to breathe again. This is what psychologist Dr. Harville Hendricks calls becoming your own beloved. The most important relationship promises you'll ever make are to yourself. Psychologist Dr. Peter Levine's work on trauma shows that healing involves restoring your sense of groundedness. You're developing what Stephen Porges calls neuroception of safety. As researcher Kristen Neff's work demonstrates, self-compassion is an inexhaustible resource. Unlike external validation, the more you draw from this well, the more it replenishes. This is what psychologist Dr. Dan Siegel calls mindsight, the ability to see and direct your inner world with clarity and compassion. You've become the captain of your own ship. Psychologist Carl Jung's concept of individuation reaches this moment when all parts of yourself come home to the integrated whole and you become who you were always meant to be. Psychologist Erik Erikson called this generativity, the stage where we turn our healing into service for others. Your journey becomes medicine for the world. This is what psychologist Dr. Marshall Rosenberg called compassionate giving, when your overflow nourishes others without depleting you because you're drawing from an infinite source. As psychologist Dr. Alice Miller wrote, "The truth about our childhood is stored up in our body. By healing yourself, you break chains that might have bound generations." Psychologist Dr. William James observed that the greatest revolution is the change of a person's way of seeing. From this height, you understand every step was necessary. Carl Jung was right. I'd rather be whole than good. Your shadow, integrated, becomes a source of creativity and vitality rather than something to fear. Psychologist Dr. Erik Erikson called this stage generativity versus stagnation. Your healing plants trees under whose shade you may never sit, but future generations will. Psychologist Carol Dweck's growth mindset becomes your default. You see challenges as opportunities and understand that healing isn't a destination, but a continuous journey. This is emotional kintsugi, what psychologist Dr. Bessel van der Kolk might call post-traumatic wisdom. Your breaks become the places where your light shines through most beautifully. As psychologist Dr. Daniel Siegel teaches about mindsight and integration, your personal healing radiates outward, contributing to what he calls the wheel of awareness for all humanity. Psychologist Dr. Carl Jung described this as the conjunctio oppositorum, the sacred marriage of opposites within yourself, your power and vulnerability, strength and softness, finally working in harmony. Healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you were before the world told you who you should be. The journey continues. Subscribe and join our community of conscious growth.